Hello, Miami. You're watching 305 Sports Now, your home podcast and channel for all things Miami sports related. I am Will.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me.
Hello, Miami. Welcome to 305 Sports Now. Once again, I am your host, Will, and today's guest is a great friend of the show, and it's somebody that I, for years, admired in the radio business as well. He is the host of Locked On Canes, and he's an occasional host on WQAM. He's going to be bringing us all the scoop on practice. It's practice to start today. All right, all the scoop on practice, and of course, the recruiting of Bryce Fitzgerald and Bang Hanks and others. Ladies and gentlemen, this man needs no introduction. This young man needs no further introduction, and he is the host of Locked On Canes, Mr. Alex Donno. What's up, Alex? How's it going?
Well, I'm doing well, man. I'm so happy to be back. I just got to watch the media viewing at the first practice of training camp for Miami, so I feel like a kid in a candy store. Football is basically back. I know some people would say it's not back until August 31st when they play the first game, but for me, first day of practice means football's back.
Yeah, it's amazing, and thank you so much for coming on. I was telling you before the show how appreciative of you that you took the time from your break, from practice and the media coverage to come on here. So we're very grateful to have you on. Again, because you are the voice of the digital world of the Miami Hurricanes, man. So again, we're blessed to have you. But I have to ask a question. So since it's first day of practice and so on, what have you seen so far? Who stood out to you without giving away too much? Because I don't want you to get in trouble with the coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna pretend I saw anything revolutionary out there today. We mostly were getting to watch individual drills, a couple little 7-on-7 things. First, I'll say it's really good seeing Mark Fletcher out there practicing. It's really good seeing Akeem Mesidor out there practicing. He had a weird situation in spring where Akeem was healthy enough to participate, but he was waiting on these special custom shoes from Adidas based on, the foot injuries he's had over the last couple of years. He wasn't able to fully practice until he got these custom cleats. He's got them now. So it's great seeing him back out there. I was able to get a look at some of the new additions, who weren't on the team back in spring, guys who came through the transfer portal, after, May and beyond. Damian Martinez, of course, getting prominent reps at running back. He's a physical specimen. Just looking at he and Mark Fletcher. I think Fletcher's maybe even a little, I don't know if he's like thicker, but he's like even taller than Martinez. But the two guys are both battering rams, so it's great seeing them out there. Tyler Barron looks, really good when he's in that jersey out there, the new defensive end. I didn't get as good of a look at Simeon Barrow today, but I did get a look at him at media day. Got to interview him yesterday, and that dude is that dude's a monster. So it's good to know that they've added some good size, some good looking players even since the last time we got to watch them practice last spring.
A little concerned about Mark Fletcher. He had a really rough injury at the bowl game, and no one even knew exactly if he was going to be able to play up to maybe even halfway through the season. Now, apparently, there's rumors going around that he may even play against Florida. How did he look out there? What have you heard about him possibly playing on August 31st? Is it something that's just a fan rumor, or is that a possibility?
I think it's definitely a possibility because I think everything that I've heard regarding Fletcher, and I did have a chance to talk to him about 6 weeks ago. Yeah, we didn't get into all the specifics of his recovery, but he told me that the recovery was going well, and everything I've heard seemingly behind the scenes is that he's been ahead of schedule. Will that coming off of what seemed like a pretty serious foot injury. He's been rocking the rehab, and I think in his case, if it was the reports out there have been that it's a Liz Frank injury, which can be really tricky. I just think if anything, there could be an abundance of caution with him. So I'm pretty mixed. You saw my personal opinion as to whether or not he's going to play in that opening game. Like he's probably physically healthy enough to do so, but I think they're going to use an abundance of caution just to make sure there's no risk of a setback or a re-injury with what he recovered from. So I think it could. I'd say probably better than 50% he's ready to play in that game, but I think it's going to come down to maybe closer to game day. They're going to make that final decision with him, but he seems good. Like he was moving, he moves very, like you would never know, looking at him move, that he's coming off an injury. Like he moves fine. He looked fine at media day out there yesterday. So I think it's great news that he apparently took his rehab very seriously and is recovering well.
Uh, I'm really glad to hear that, because him and Martinez will be a very dangerous punch, as far as basically you have beef and power, more power coming at you. So that would be a nice a nice mix to have those two, especially against Florida. But again, want to make sure that Mark is healthy for the game as well, and throughout the whole rest of the season. We really don't want to see him get hurt. Now, I want to ask you, guys like Chance Robinson were not able to do spring ball because they just weren't able to be, just the schools wouldn't allow them. Have you seen any of the guys that came in during the summer, and how have they performed in practice? Have you ever witnessed them yet?
Yeah, I mean, I got a little bit of a look at Chance doing drills today. He's another one who physically looks really good. It seems like even compared to what his body was at St. Thomas Aquinas, it looks like he's added some bulk. Who else? One guy I want to get a more of a look at tomorrow. I didn't see him as much today. Who transferred in was Sam Brown. I did get a chance to interview Sam Brown at media day on Tuesday. Didn't get a great look at him at practice today, so I'd like to. But someone I did get a look at today in the running back room is Jordan Lyle. I mean, that dude, he's got big legs, and we're again, we're talking about a true freshman who I think could end up getting some playing time on what's a stacked running back room, because you got, like you mentioned, the 1-2 punch hopefully at the top with Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher. You've also got Chris Johnson, AJ Allen, who's got a lot of experience in that room. So then you got, like, between the two freshmen, Jordan Lyle and Chris Wheatley Humphrey, can these guys get on the field? And I think there could be potential for both of them. Wheatley Humphrey was here for spring football, so he was able to get the head start. But then Jordan Lyle, like that dude looks like a player. Like he looks like he's physically ready to get some work at this level.
Yeah, no. Even when he was recruiting, came down here just for visits. He looked really big as well.
Yeah.
So he looked, he was already ready to play. Day one starter type. How physically massive he is as well. From the defensive side of the ball, for example, Justin Scott. Have you been able to take a look at him at the moment, or down the line is somebody you look more in practice? How does he look if you're able to look at him in practice?
Yeah, I did get a look at him a little bit in practice today, and seeing him, without the helmet. Got a chance to talk to him yesterday at media day, and it seemed like he was getting some prominent reps today in practice, which is nice to see. And I know, one of the defensive coaches was, I think Jason Taylor was saying yesterday that he's someone who can get on the field right away. Justin Scott was Miami's one of their 5-star recruits from the class of 2024. And he wasn't here for spring football, so he didn't get that opportunity to get the head start. But I think in his case, he's probably so physically gifted, and mentally seems very strong. He seems like a really intelligent football player, good football IQ. He was someone that I noticed today. Like he was someone that
Good.
kind of jumps off the page when you see him physically. You can understand. There's certain guys when you see him in person, you're like, yeah, I can understand why that guy was a 5-star recruit.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for the segue. Going into recruiting right now, there's a lot of talk about recruiting. I know it's a dead period right now for all schools, but there's a lot of chatter, especially as far as defensive back goes. I want to go into Ben Hanks first, and we'll talk about Bryce Fitzgerald. There seems to be, like, from what I've heard from watching your show and hearing other people as well and other podcasts, there seems to be a bit of a battle internally between the Florida legacy thing and becoming a Miami Hurricane. Where are the Canes at currently with Ben Hanks Jr. as far as possibly landing the kid, or is the Florida pull a bit more than what we could see?
Yeah, I think if his father wasn't, former Gators legend Ben Hanks Sr., I think Miami would be far and away the leader for this one. I think they've done just about everything in his recruitment, and he's a local player at Booker T. Washington, which is one of those important pipeline high schools to
Mhm.
Miami, and I think Miami has given Ben Hanks a lot to think about. I think Miami has recruited him as hard and as well. They've really made him a priority in this class. But like you said, it's gonna be a battle. And if I had to just I haven't spoken to Hanks personally, so I don't know what he's really thinking. But if I'm to base this on the people that I talk to, who cover him and kind of where the trends have been going, I would probably say the trends are leaning to him towards Florida right now. We have seen a couple of RPM predictions, like which are the On3 crystal balls that have kind of pointed him in Florida's direction recently. It seems like Florida did a really good job with his official visit in June. And if there's one thing I could say about Billy Napier, he's a pretty good recruiter. He's not as good of a recruiter as Mario Cristobal, of course, but Billy Napier, he seems to do a really good job with the legacies. Like he was able to lock
Mhm.
in Vernell Brown. It's kind of moving in that direction with Ben Hanks. The only thing I'll add there, and this is what my recruiting overlord guest Brian Smith always says about Florida, is with their coaching situation being so volatile, they've got the hardest schedule in the country. And a lot of folks think Billy Napier may not make it even through the season, or may not make it past the end of the season, just because like they're an okay team, but they've got the toughest schedule in the country. And if he loses 7, 8 games there this year, which is kind of the expectation, then I don't know if Napier's going to make it through the season. Of course, anytime if a head coach loses their job, it turns your recruiting class completely
Mhm.
upside down. And some players already consider that when they say, maybe I don't want to commit to Florida because I don't know who the coach is going to be when National Signing Day rolls around. For guys who are legacies, they may not think about that as much. Let me just lock it in now and see what happens. But obviously, if he were Napier to lose his job, it would completely turn that upside down. So this is one of those things, and I'm not exactly. I don't know off the top of my head when Hanks is going to announce. I think sometime in the fall. But even if the trend right now seems to be Florida, but even if he does choose Florida in the fall, Miami would not give up before December 20th.
Yeah, I agree. Let me tell you, the Vernell Brown one really stung because that was my favorite receiver in this recruiting class, him and Jamie French. So, and
Yeah.
I think Vernell is the Duke Johnson of Florida. I think no matter what happens, Vernell might just keep his commitment. The way I heard his visit went with Florida. So, but I still think there's hope for Ben Hanks. So hopefully we could lock it down, and it'd be a good lockdown because from what I've heard, he's probably the best lockdown corner in the state. From what I've heard, as far as people I know who I've spoken to as well. But the whole Billy Napier thing, I'm kind of surprised that he still does pretty decently, even with legacies. Because if you recall, the former coach Manny Diaz, one of the main reasons why he was 60th ranked at one point is because a lot of the recruits didn't know if he was going to be the coach the following year. So that kind of stung. What does Florida do, since you kind of know the lockdown Gator people a little bit? So you talked to them a little bit. What does Florida do, or Napier doing, that kind of still at least gives these blue chip recruits something to think about?
I think the SEC is a big draw. Florida does have a draw with great football tradition. The hotel rooms in Gainesville don't look very nice from what I've seen. A lot of cracked walls, ceilings, a lot of Motel Sixes, but they do have good football facilities. And I don't know, to be honest, with the conversations that I've had with Brandon Olson from Locked On Gators, who does a really good job, he seems to think, and he would know better than me, that Billy Napier probably has more job security than the general consensus. And
Okay.
a lot of it has to do with stuff that people who don't really cover the Gators that closely don't think about. I can draw a parallel with Miami in that a lot of people will just say, oh, well, Mario Cristobal, he didn't take the knee last year. That dude's probably on the hot seat. And if they don't win 10 games, they'll probably fire. I would say no, that's not true. Because first of all, he's entering what would this be, year 3 of a
Mhm.
10-year contract, and you've got to think about how well he's recruiting and the type of infrastructure he's building there. So, some people from the outside looking in would probably think the seat is hotter, for Miami's coach than it really is. And Locked On Gators seems to feel the same way about the Billy Napier situation. I think that his buyout apparently is not very attractive at this moment. But again, things could, with their schedule, because Miami doesn't have nearly as tough of a schedule as Florida. So with the Gators' schedule, things could go south there pretty quick. But he seems to think that it would take a very massive financial commitment to actually fire Billy Napier, and he has his doubts that that would happen this year.
Okay. Oh, thank you for letting us know that as well. A little tidbit of information about Florida. I still think boosters will speak eventually, and that could be Billy Napier's downfall. Not so much the university, and I think that's what pretty will happen to Billy. But again, it is a tough schedule for Florida. It's a no-win situation for Billy Napier. Another defensive back I want to talk about. You've talked about him. Corey Carmona, Chalupa Batman, loves this young man, but he hasn't really been spoken about at the national level. And I've recently done research on this young man, and I'm trying to figure out why. Bryce Fitzgerald out of Columbus Senior High School. Bryce is a young man who's a phenomenal athlete, 10 interceptions, 2 pick sixes, and plays in a school like Columbus that plays top-tier competition. In my perspective, why has this kid flown under the radar? Why isn't he in the conversations with the DJ Pickett's, the Ben Hankses of the world, the Jabari Antoines? And what is your view about him possibly committing to the University of Miami? I've heard good things from people that know him personally, but he's been very quiet about it. What is your view about him possibly becoming a Cane? I know he went to the cookout this weekend and heard he had a great time.
Yeah, I mean, to the first part of your question as to why he doesn't get more hype, I don't know, honestly. I don't know if maybe I haven't spoken to Bryce personally, so I don't know if he is maybe a little bit more on the reserved side, because that has more of an effect than people realize. And maybe I'm wrong about that, and he's really outspoken. But I know that there are certain players that Miami recruits that are 4 stars that could maybe be 5 stars if they promoted themselves a little bit more. I don't know if that's the case with Bryce or not. As far as the way Miami is trending with him, I think Miami made a significant move at that barbecue cookout this past weekend, because one of the reasons why, in recent months, I haven't talked that much about Bryce Fitzgerald was I tend to talk more about the guys that I really think Miami has a legit shot to land.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't really putting him in that category for a while. I know that obviously this is a player that they were recruiting, and this is a player, you mentioned Miami Columbus High School. You got so many connections to the staff. Mario Cristobal, Alex Mirabal, both have the Columbus connections. So, but up until the last couple of weeks, I didn't feel like I had that much buzz. This is a player that could end up at Miami. It seems now it's a very much a state of Florida thing for him, Florida State, Florida. And I think Miami now getting more in the mix with Fitzgerald. So I think sometimes with Miami's evaluations, they like to see guys more in person. They like to meet and interact with these guys. And so maybe whatever happened at that cookout this past weekend might have been beneficial to both sides. Maybe Bryce got to see more of Miami, and maybe Miami got to know him a little bit better. And I think he's announcing in August, I think August 17th, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So, and one of the things that he said, Will, was he was really happy he got this last look at Miami before he makes his announcement in about 2.5 weeks. So I think Miami really gave Bryce Fitzgerald something to think about. I also wonder if maybe there's a little bit more urgency for Miami to land Bryce after, what unfortunately happened to Amari Wallace, who suffered a really bad injury. And I wish him a speedy recovery. And obviously we're talking about players who still have a whole nother year of high school before they would even get to Miami. So hopefully he has ample time to recover, because Amari Wallace is an awesome player, but he suffered a compound fracture to his leg just last week. So I don't know if maybe Miami feels more urgency to get an additional defensive back. But whatever the case may be, it feels like Miami has turned up the heat with Bryce Fitzgerald.
Yeah, they definitely have a couple of sources. One of them is a listener of mine. It was really funny. He's been very open on my chat He says Miami's in it, and another one that knows the family, not so much him, says Miami's in it. I heard it's a Miami, LSU, maybe Florida battle at the moment between. Even though he has a top 5, there's really 3 that he's looking at, but he does like Miami, so that's a good thing. And again, he's kind of like a sleeper guy, and the reason why I say even though he's a 4-star recruit, I think he's the 13th best defensive back in the country, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
He's long. He can play wide receiver. He has good ball tracking skills. Again, he doesn't mind getting in the face of a running back and tackling. So I'm like, where was this guy? And the entire narrative conversation that we didn't mention this guy. But again, it is a very heavily defensive back driven recruiting class for the 2025 class. So hence the reason why you probably get lost in that mix as well. Another guy that you and I both like. Okay, you and I both like, and he's just turning a lot of heads, but he's very quiet too. Is Aoi Epenesa, right, over out of Illinois? Saw his highlights. I call him a savage. In general, the way he tackles, the way he approaches the game, ferocious, good footwork. One of the best swim moves I've seen since Ruben Bain's recruitment as well. What can you tell us about Aoi from your evaluations and also Miami's chances of getting him? I heard it's a two-way battle between Utah and Miami, but I was not yet out of the mix.
Yeah, he's a stud, Epinesa, and this is a game changing, like program changing type of edge rusher if Miami can land him, and it would be another massive feather in Jason Taylor's cap. You saw it in Jason Taylor and Big Joe Salavea, the top defensive line class in the country that they pulled last year. If you can get a guy like Aoi Epenesa, who I think is realistic, I mean, another great interior defensive lineman we talk about is a guy like Elijah Griffin, who's Miami's in the mix for, but Georgia are big favorites there. Whereas with Epinesa, I think Miami has been like a slight trending favorite recently, but like you said, he doesn't talk a whole lot like to folks out there. So I don't think Epinesa is like revealing, because certain recruits they'll tell people like, oh yeah, I'm gonna probably go there, right? And so that and it kind of the rumors start to spread. I don't think Aoi is really like telling a whole lot of people outside of his like family circle where he's leaning. So I think there's a lot of assumptions that come into play, but Miami's been pulling out all the stops when it comes to landing this guy who could really revolutionize your defensive front. And I think you characterized it properly. It seems like the trend is Miami versus Utah. I would never completely rule out Iowa, like you said, only because he's got multiple family ties there, having brothers and his father having played there. So I'm sure that pull is pretty powerful. And, for as boring as Iowa is to watch on offense, their defense has been really good in the Kirk Ferentz era. So I wouldn't completely rule them out, but I think Miami has given Epinesa a lot to think about, to the point where like we've had a few of those crystal balls come in pointing him in Miami's favor, but we'll see, because I don't know if he has an announcement date locked in yet. Maybe he has he could be one of those guys who just kind of does it out of the blue and maybe doesn't make a big thing about it, like, oh, I'm going to go on 24/7 stream live at such and such date. He might just kind of quietly do his on social media. So hopefully Miami can keep trending, because they seem to be trending near the front on him.
Yeah. I think having a Hall of Fame defensive end coach really helps. I think it really does help. I also think that based on his size, I wouldn't be surprised if he does come into the Canes that they do use him a bit like they did Ruben Bain last season, and they move him occasionally to the interior. He's a big guy. I can see him manhandling a lot of guards, right, as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if he not only plays the edge, but I wouldn't be surprised if on third downs you would see that young man play the interior as well, because again, his athleticism is freakish as well. So that's just my perspective on Aoi. I really hope he commits. I like to see a man, a beast. Like I said, ferocious beast is what I like to call him.
Savage, was that what you called him? Or
Savage, yes.
Savage. It's a great word for him. He is a savage in a good way, of course.
No, absolutely. Savage, ferocious beast. I've described him in every category you could think of, that young man. When I saw that film, like, and his size too, I'm like, it's a junior, man. It's like just massive. And then so I'm like, oh, this guy's gonna play the interior, especially with Guidry. If he's hopefully still around as a defensive coordinator with the Guidry, he'll play the interior. He's just too good. And with guards, he'll manhandle them, especially on third down passing situations where it's 3rd and 15. You have Bane him. No. Forget it. You know, he's it's too many guys to block. Too many stud defensive pass blocking pass rushing specialists to block. A little tongue twister there as well. Alex, let us know where we can find you, man. I know you got to get back to the interviews real soon, so I really appreciate you coming on. Let us know where we can find you.
Well, it's always a pleasure to join you first and foremost. Will does an awesome job, so make sure everybody subscribes to Will's channel. If you're watching him for the first time or the 100th time and you haven't subscribed, make sure you do that. And yeah, you can find me at Locked On Canes, YouTube channel, Locked On Canes, audio podcast, Locked On Canes, X at Locked On Canes. And we bring you guys as much info and hopefully as much entertainment as we possibly can. We do shows every day talking Miami Hurricanes. And so, yeah, we'll see everybody. We'll talk to everybody throughout fall camp, and then we'll see everybody August 31st against the Gators.
Right. And any QAM appearances?
I don't, so the next, could be, but the next time I know for sure will be post game after the Gators game. I'll be on QAM for post game August 31st. I don't currently have any other QAM shows on my calendar, but a lot of times they hit me up last minute, so you never know.
Well, it's always good, man. It's always good. Alex, thank you so much for joining us again, man. Always a pleasure. Appreciate you taking the time, during in between practice and media time to talk to us here at 305 Sports Now. God bless you. Thank you so much once again. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you heard, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to 305 Sports Now. Once again, I am your host, Will. Do not forget to like and subscribe also to Locked On Canes with Alex Donno. Have a good one, guys. Stay safe. Bye-bye, guys.